Seven were good.
Yeah. With that, we we're so good. With that, we call to order
7-11 are doubles.
the December local planning committee meeting. So welcome, everyone. The first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes.
Move approval.
And we do have to do a roll call since Mary's participating remotely.
Okay.
Can we get a second?
Second.
And all in favor?
Brian, aye.
Margot, aye.
Ed, aye.
Joyce, aye.
Bernadette, aye.
Barbara, aye.
Mary, aye.
Thank you. Okay, so coming in, then we'll launch right into we have such a good packed agenda. We'll go in order. It's just coming up for me here. All right, so we renew and approve the minutes. I think with that, we should just launch right into the meat of the meeting. B on the agenda was sort of the timing of everything, but really C, which is incredibly important and related to the timing of everything, is the feedback from the Board of Selectmen and also the Planning Board about the HPP, Housing Production Plan. So I'll just very briefly and then turn it over to esteemed Christine. My understanding, sort of following along, was that the Planning Board approved the Housing Production Plan.
They did.
Yes.
They did, yes.
So we have that, and then there was a non-vote at the Select Board, and we highlighted that, and a lot of us watched the video directly, and I'll turn it over to you.
They've requested to have a joint meeting with the planning board and the local planning committee.
Right.
And, just to discuss some information, aspects of the plan and, some of the goals and strategies that have been highlighted. And so, I think the select board had some concerns relative to Pine Oaks, and Pine Oak Village 4 project, and whether or not the HPP was endorsing that.
Right.
So that was one issue, and then there were a couple of other issues just relative to the overall some of the content of the plan, and I think some echoed the concerns of the planning board of not having a more clear action plan oriented to goals and strategies for Harwich specifically, which I did try to convey that was going to be in the local comprehensive plan.
Right.
And the housing production plan was also, this was part of, the housing production plan is really a state document, and it's a plan for following state guidelines, and it will be submitted to state for their approval, and it's really an opportunity for the town to leverage this as a plan that can help the town with state and federal funding once the town is moving forward with its own projects and programs. And so, so I think there was some, there were some expectations that clearly weren't met. So I do think the local comprehensive plan hopefully will fulfill those expectations, and I think this might be a good opportunity as an indication before we go into town meeting. What the concerns may be, and just really just doing some more outreach and some intake from those board members.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank you, publicly and officially for representing us and our work as a committee and before the board, and we really appreciate you. And that was a tough job. So, thank you. I want to say, thank you. And I had to be very sort of candid, we happened to speak right before the meeting. It was good because we were kind of putting our ducks in a row, and then I got kind of real-time feedback the next morning, and I think kind of where we're at it, what I say, in retrospect, I think it was a really hard mission, because I think it's a hard document to look at in isolation, like you said, if there's expectations to have sort of other information. Come on in, hello, welcome, sit right up, join us, we're in it. We're in it.
Right.
We're just talking about the select board, and yes, so, and though I didn't appreciate necessarily the tone of all the feedback, I think a lot of the meat of the feedback, sure, and also I am obviously deeply respectful of the process, and we are as a committee, but I thought a lot of it was potentially, not moot, but less, like, maybe we would have gotten less of that feedback if you're looking at the HBP and the LCP together. A lot of what they were asking for is, I'm like echoing exactly what you're saying. We were like really grinding out in the LCP. That said, this is like a massive undertaking, right? And we're all doing the best we can on the timing. And so I responded back right away, and I think I included all of us for in terms of trying to get a time for that joint meeting on the books, because I think we should all be there.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to, I've been noodling on this strategy-wise, and totally defer to you as the professional planner and our really valued town support staff. Is it still realistic to think we're gonna get this to town meeting in May? And I don't mean that as a loaded question, and I'm okay if it's a gray area, and if you say yes, but, because then I have a strategy thought about that related, but I want to make sure, is that still the goal?
I believe it's still the goal to have this ready by town meeting.
Okay.
We are under contract with
Yeah.
Clay and Bond,
Yep.
and we are going over some budget items
Yep.
to increase the budget for completing all three plans.
Right.
And so it's my understanding that this needs to be completed by town meeting in preparation for town meeting.
Yes.
And I think if it means having a couple of more meetings with other town departments, I think that may be worthwhile, and sooner than later.
So
Yeah.
this was my thought about that, and please, it's open to feedback, and my thought was, okay, and I agree, but, I don't fully understand all the, the nuance of like, you were, the timing and stuff like that, so and what we're held to in terms of bringing it to town meeting. I think that should be our goal. It seems like it's a very doable goal. I wanted to, and understanding that the valued professional services from Ty and Bond were also being revisited a little bit, and how to make all that work, and you got 3 big plans. I wanted to strategize a little bit. I thought that we could potentially sort of really leverage the wisdom and the experience of the committee, and kind of, because these are massive documents, and try and kind of maybe voluntold all of us about taking like kind of spearhead responsibility for parts of it, and if that would maybe be a way to get this across the finish line, because the last time I was very candid about this, looked at the HPP, I did not interpret that as tacit interpretation, tacit support for Pine Oaks. But we've all sat on this, we've all done loads and loads of outreach, which we're documenting for Tig and Bond, I think, has been as open-minded and as thorough as this process is possible, really, and everyone has heard everything. So I think it would be, if we can kind of strategize about the committee manpower to then look at these documents in detail, and be, okay, you're the go-to soul about this, if that would potentially be a way to make sure we don't have any anything unexpected. I wanted to open that up for discussion, and I had a little bit of thought about that. Does that make sense?
Can I?
Please.
Please do.
What I was concerned about in listening to the
Yeah.
discussion at the selectmen's meeting was that they're not on the same page among themselves about what they want. They were, and in fact, some of their comments were in conflict with
Correct.
one another.
Correct.
So it's hard to know how to take direction from that.
What I looked at it this morning at like 5:15, looking at my Christmas tree, drinking coffee. I looked at it again, so it's like, I looked at it. What impressed me was, in some, the comments were reflective of the tension that we've all heard and tried to put into the comprehensive plan itself, is, hey, we've got this real stress of housing versus tree, I'm reducing this, but, housing versus trees, and housing and versus community character, and housing and development, and that tension that is complicated, right? If the next time I guess why I'm talking about literal manpower strategy is the next time we come together with them, whether that be, I offered a lot of dates, like whether that be right before, it's hard, we're coming up the holiday here, right before Christmas or immediately in the new year, my goal would be that the document that we put before them, including the comprehensive plan, the housing production plan, and the open space and rec plan, be as Harwich proven as possible. For example, like, I don't think they're gonna, the important consultant work of like some of the data and stuff, we're so grateful for they do that, and all right, they'll work that out. I think for the political sell, exactly what you're talking about for town meeting, it's gotta be as vetted on the Harwich narrative part as possible, all three of those, the next time we're all together. So Brian, Brian, before I say, so what I was kind of envisioning in my mind, and I don't want to again, voluntold, I would want people to volunteer. But for example, to think of folks' expertise of, have you kind of jump in or if two or three of us want to really take on the comprehensive plan, I feel like I've dug really into that, so I could do on that. If one or two of you feel like you really have expertise, in the housing production plan, really have you guys take responsibility, not in a trouble way, but thank you for doing, housing production plan, the open space and recreation plan. Brian, I immediately thought of you for an executive summary of some sort, because that's your strength, and you've advocated for that so much,
So I'm just gonna make a comment on, I
Yeah.
think what's missing sometimes is you can't see the forest through the trees.
Yes,
There's
yes,
so much
yes, yes,
density to it.
yes.
So that's number one. So I
Yeah.
think we need to have an upfront,
yes,
clear and concise summary.
yes,
And then we gotta close with
Yes.
the summary, then
Yes.
everything else in the
Yes.
middle will be fine.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was one thought. So
Yes.
listening to
yeah,
the select board meeting, the other thought that occurred to me is, we're trying to talk to people about a plan, and they're not on the same page of the vision with us. We gotta go, make sure they're grounded in the vision. Do you agree with the
to
vision?
be fair, I don't even think, this is in no way criticism, and this is Monday back quarterbacking, so we're all on the same team here, and we're all we're all working on behalf of Harwich, and so
Yeah.
there's no criticism at all. But in retrospect, I don't think the they've seen the vision statement, to be
No,
example,
they
right? So you're
haven't.
looking
So-
at this very dense technical document.
And the housing production
Yeah.
plan is
Yeah.
meant to be
Yeah,
a
right.
subset of
That's
the
what I mean. This is
comprehensive.
like
So we're saying,
suicide
take a look at-
mission,
Take a look at
in
this
retrospect.
appendix.
Yes,
And
yes,
we haven't
yes.
taken them through,
context.
that
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
a criticism.
It's okay, I
And when
mean-
we get everybody together, that's where we have to start.
That's what I'm saying, right, so,
Then maybe we identify a few goals. What are once you have a vision, are there concrete goals around housing, environment, land use? That if this
that's
document
great,
will then.
that's
hang
great, yeah,
together?
I don't want to steal yours.
I'm
No,
sorry.
and then I don't, to be fair, I could be totally wrong, I don't know that there's anything so controversial in the vision
No.
statement, but it sets the
It's too
groundwork.
hard to find things.
So,
So, here's a layman, right?
yeah,
A vision, strategic goals, and then the plans. And you prioritize strategic goals. And that's where I think the select board is gonna, they all, I shouldn't say all, but there were contradictory comments. So
Yeah.
it's hard to prioritize a lower level plan when you haven't prioritized the goals. And the challenge might be that all these goals might have to interoperate together. So it's hard to say whether affordable housing is more important than wastewater. They're both important, but maybe for 2025, they're slightly more important than historic.
and you know, the end goal is like, no one ever has to fully agree. You have to agree enough. Like, you know, agree enough.
Yeah, I guess, I heard Mike McCaskill basically saying that he was very unhappy with all of the detail about Pine Oaks in there, because it implied that somehow the project was approved by the town, okay? On the other hand, I heard Don Howell saying that he didn't think there was enough detail in there about how you could accomplish any of these things. Well, Pine Oaks, whether you support it or don't, is one way that you could accomplish some of these things. And so, I mean, somehow we have to, I don't think we can gloss over that. I think we have to talk about it with them. You know, nobody knows yet what's gonna happen with Pine Oaks, but, you know, if you just pull it out of there, what you're doing is you're pulling out
Yeah.
one of the major real things that could
Potentials.
actually
You know,
happen.
it occurred to me again this morning, like, you know, in front of the tree with the coffees, you know, that maybe what comes out of that discussion of like, you know, maybe there's some statement, not to get too much into the weeds, 'cause I want to go back to the strategy of, like, maybe what comes out of that is like, you know, some statement, which I think is actually in the comprehensive plan, of, you know, prioritizing development in Seward areas, you
Yeah.
know. So, okay, I think we actually say that at some point, you know,
Well,
finish, and then I wanted to get Christine and Sharon's sense of the feedback about like our strategy.
yeah, well, you know, up until now, really, the town has, in dealing with its housing, has sort of sat back and waited for things to come in. And when you do that, you're at the whim of whoever
Yeah.
brings into you.
Yep.
They've never really said, okay, let's put some housing in Harwich Center. Where can we do it? Do we have to condemn some land? Do we, you know, to do that? They've never had a strategy like that. And, you know, the wastewater plan was done basically on, solely at where we can get the biggest bang for the buck on reducing nitrogen in estuaries. And it also, coincidentally, doesn't really take into account maybe sewering other areas that don't get us as big a bang for the buck is more important to be able to provide the infrastructure we need to do housing, you know,
Right,
i.e.
more growth, yeah.
sewer some of the village centers other than East Harwich. It's also East Harwich. If you're, you know, going to locate a large amount of housing there, that's probably the neighborhood where you're gonna get the biggest fight.
No, I think
Yeah.
it would depend on where you put it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. But,
But
To Christine and Sharon, I mean, does that, please, your input about the strategy, like, I guess why I'm saying, oh, I want to focus on that, because I'm a little, I'm you know, I would like to know the date as soon as possible, because we want to be ready, because this takes a lot of work. Like, and, like, you guys can do, you do what you gotta do in terms of your truly consultant stuff about the data and stuff, but we need the lead time to get these narratively correct. And no one of us can do it, we have to do it well, and then we go into that prepared, and I am like confident if we are prepared and as many of us are there as possible, together, like we can really move this forward. I mean, this is what we've stood on the last 2 years, and I think there's a lot of power in this committee, but we gotta be ready. So that's like the date and your feedback about the strategy. Yeah.
I'll follow up with administration. No. I'll follow up with
Yeah.
administration and get some dates.
Yeah.
Because I also understand that going into town meeting, the select board have a lot of other things on
Of course.
items on their agenda, so.
Of course.
I'll follow up with, administration, and I think, to Margot's point, Pine Oaks, being in the plan, I think it's hard not to reference it because they already
Yeah.
have filed.
Yeah.
I didn't feel that there was an endorsement
I
of it.
agree, right.
But I think we can maybe add some language
Yeah.
of some of the concerns that the town has raised,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the site eligibility letter that we submitted to the state. I think that would be, to make it a little bit more pointed and address, Select Board Member McCaskill's concerns. And, we can also ask them to take a look at some of the language as well, just
Yeah.
to make sure that they're okay with it.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with that, but I do think it is important to mention it because the comprehensive permit law is an issue for all communities. It's not just Harwich, and it's not the state singling out Harwich. So I do also want to make sure that we keep that in mind as well. That housing is going to be the opportunity through private developers or nonprofit developers, and if there's an opportunity,
Yeah.
that will happen.
We can
with-
either take the initiative ourselves, and when I say ourselves, I'm talking about
The town,
or,
or have it
as
thrust
you
upon
said,
us.
you take what comes in, and you may or may not like it.
Yeah, no, and all of this is reflective of our work the past 2 years. So it all works for good, and I think the timing is a higher order. Like, I'm glad it's happening now. We've got time to and if in that, I tried to be like very specific about a bunch of dates of those. If we could, then we will put the full show on. So, yeah.
Could I make a couple of suggestions? Mike McCaskill mentioned that he had 5 pages of notes of things that he didn't like, or he was, I would
Love his notes.
it would be good to get the
Love his
notes
notes.
and get a more specific idea of what he objects to in there.
I did ask them to send forward any comments, so I'll also, when I follow up with the administration relative to the dates,
Yeah.
I'll also ask if they have any written comments that they should send it to us,
Yeah,
Yeah,
at a time, just so that we can
we have a
address
better
those
idea,
issues.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I
The-
agree with that,
Yeah,
absolutely.
that's an old tactic of saying you have a bunch of notes but not giving them out so you can bring them out.
yeah, well, it's,
Need a battle.
there's no way that we can rewrite
They're all on the same team there.
until we have an idea of what it is that we're rewriting.
And I don't even know that
You
this
know.
is necessarily rewriting. I think it's as presenting as comprehensive three-pronged thing all at once, as Harwich vetted as we can possibly be, and then that's the possibility. I mean, because I think I think we'll pick up on some of the outliers, and if there's reasonable debate, there's reasonable debate. Of
Yeah.
course.
Yep.
What-
The,
what-
the other thing is that I don't think that there's any way that we can, but we can't, before we meet with them, rewrite anything. I think we need to go and meet with them, get a better idea of what they want.
Right.
Here's my issue. I think the language thing, they didn't have the comprehensive plan. It's like nobody's fault. I mean, it's happening. It's like, this is what it is. We're working. There's only so many hours in a day. We're volunteers. Like, like there's other like immediately pressing issues in the town that Christine's working on. You know, there's nobody's dying, but like I think they've got to see all three together to understand it. Otherwise, we're just talking in an empty room.
Well, that's part of what I was concerned about, is that, I mean, the open space plan, which is still in progress, and the housing plan are much more detailed than the local comprehensive plan. I mean, they've got a lot more meat in them. And if they're not satisfied with enough meat in the housing production plan, I thought that was a really good document. You know, I'm a professional planner. I've been looking at these things all my life, and I thought that Karen did a great job with it.
You did.
Now, so if part of this may be that their expectations about what they thought this was going to be versus what it's supposed to be under the state
Yes.
rules are not.
I don't know how
jiving.
much of the comprehensive plan is like the Harwich frosting, so to speak, or the Harwich chocolate that'll make that go down.
Well,
They also,
what Christine had said earlier
Yeah.
should be extrapolated from this recording and be part of a preface to that, because you're basically explaining to the layman especially that, and it goes to what then Margot followed up with it, there are things that get put upon us by the state, or things that we must do for the state, and if we don't get out ahead of it, then they tell us, and you know, whatever, it was exactly what you said to them at the meeting about, you know, we're not the only town or community that has to cope with this, but here's how Harwich hopes to do it, you know, that kind
Do we
of
wanna
language
file it, or do
is
we
the
wanna use
kind
it?
of thing that the average person in town is gonna understand it. They're gonna understand that when they read it, and they're gonna know that we're just looking ahead and trying to plan as best we
I
can
think-
for this
I
community.
think part of the problem, though, too, is that there are some on the select board that really don't want the state involved with where we, you know, how we move forward
don't
on
have a
this.
choice.
I think, you know, Richard's comments in the meeting were apropos. It's like, well, that's nice that you feel that way. I might feel that, I've been feeling that way for about 40 years now, but that's the landscape
Reality.
we're dealing with here. You know, nobody is going to get rid of 40B. If anything, it's going to get strengthened. So, you know, we have to play under the rules that we have.
and the recent housing legislation actually strengthens it.
Right.
From the state's perspective, and I understand there's
So we have
at
to,
least two members that would like to raise the flag and lead it into battle to overturn all that stuff, but it's not gonna happen,
It's
and
not
the
gonna
local
happen.
comprehensive plan can't be a manifesto to start that movement.
No.
You know,
it has to be a plan to
Yeah.
help house people in our town
yeah.
as best we can
And-
when we're up against it.
So that-
Christine was gonna say something. and then-
Yeah,
and then-
and just as this is more the housing production plan, once in the, just like the open space and rec plan and the LCP, once these have been approved and put away, they're also huge opportunities that put us in a better position for state and federal funding for
Right.
projects or programs. And I don't want, I want that to also be a really clear point for
Why we do
public,
it.
because these like, a lot of projects are depending on having these plans in place.
Yes.
Because otherwise, you're not gonna be eligible for
Yeah.
some funding.
So with that, because I wanna get to some of the meat of our deliberation, and I'm a planner, not a professional planner, but like I am not a planner, but like a step A through G, you know, plans A through G. So presuming we're gonna get, a nice date with the planning board, the, select board and us, I would wager that that's gonna be right in the new year if I were betting money, but it could be, it's not gonna probably be next week, but it could be right before the holiday. So Christine's gonna work on that for us. Thank you. Well, as soon as we know, we will let you all know ASAP. Could we have a little bit of a strategy? And I don't want, I can be bossy and tell you what to do, but could you all volunteer to like kind of take a piece of this, and I just want to be clear, to Margot's point, not rewrite it, but like read it in detail, the coffee, out, focused, like, and just Harwich prove it, and, turn the track changes on, and either like send it back to, and then this gets into like, I know they're running out of quarters in terms of the time, so, but just so that there's nothing, so that when we have that date, that we can send them something as clean or Harwich approven is what I'm trying to say, like local, does that make sense?
It
Yeah.
does. I don't have
Okay.
a problem with that, but
Yeah.
I would still highly suggest that we have something like an executive
Are you
summary that
willing
Well-
to do that? Would you,
And-
I don't
would
think
you?
I have the skill to do it.
I think it would be a waste of our time to do it before we meet with them.
An executive summary?
I do.
Could you not even say an executive summary? Could you?
Wait, hold on a second.
Please.
I think there is an executive summary that rises up out of our body of work. Now, we may tailor it or change it once we hear their thoughts, but
Right.
I think it's very difficult sometimes to find the essence in
Yeah.
the body of work. It's
Oh,
Well, yeah.
I totally agree with you about the need to have an executive summary. But I guess my point is that until we get clearer direction from them,
then I don't want to send
Well-
this to them.
They've got to see it.
Well, then let's put something in front of it.
They've
Maybe
got
if
to
it's-
say, there's nothing, we're not hiding any here, then they can see all three now.
Joyce, they're not gonna have the time to sit down and read through the whole thing with everything else that they have to do. They're not gonna read it.
But then how can,
Well-
I mean this, then how can it be criticized if you haven't read it?
Well, we're talking about the whole plan, right? Yeah, not
They
just.
all three stand together.
Yeah, well, that's even more work, looking at all three plans. Just reading through the open space plan. It's a long plan. There's a ton of information in there. I think we've got to go in and try to get them to better articulate what they really think is wrong with this. And then see if we can get some consensus among them about what do they want us to do to address that. Because otherwise, we're just gonna be spinning our wheels here.
May I make a suggestion?
Please, Mary.
From the left field here.
Yeah, okay, hello.
And everyone has made, I agree with everyone's point, and with Margot and also Brian's points as far as needing some type of summary. In my view, I'm seeing that we have the housing plan, the outdoor space plan. They're all called plans. They're all labeled plans. And I think that's a confusing point for probably anyone to understand the relationship to a local comprehensive plan. So if we are going to meet and have a meeting that Margot suggests with the select board to see specifically what happens, if we could kind of put together some kind of narrative, an example, if you will, of how the HPP is a supporting document to the local comprehensive plan and play it into a short narrative. Give an example of how that document is used, as Christine said, as a guide for the actionable things that happen in the local comprehensive plan. That might help to have them understand better what that's all about. And it also shortens the workload of really in trying to move it forward in giving that bit of, for lack of a better term, education and better understanding on how these documents work to support the local comprehensive plan.
Thank you. No, thank you, Mary. And and in response to this, it kind of, as I was listening to you, I mean this respectfully, we have done an incredibly thorough process the last 2 years. And while I appreciate the select board's feedback, I actually think it is our time, and we have to get their buy-in, clearly they have to approve it, but I think I am less interested in asking an open-ended question, like, what do you think about this? I wanna, again, respectfully lead a little bit from the front on this. We have done this work, and I think, and they can, and they gotta approve it. I don't think, and I think ultimately they will. I think we have to tell them all that this has been done. And no, there can be different strategies, but all this housing stuff, sure. But like, there is a lot of consensus that data-driven visioning, all this, I mean, which has literally been 2 years worth of work, that is reflected in this. And without giving it to, so I'm not gonna die on the hill of, hey, you gotta make it as good as possible. I will die on the hill a little bit. They've gotta have before we go to a meeting, they've gotta have all three. And if they don't read it, fine, well, or whatever, but like, then your feedback, I mean, all three of these stand together. You can't criticize the HPP, I mean, you can criticize the HPP, but you've gotta see all three together, because this is all. And then maybe the strategy is then, when I will die on that sword, in that meeting is, Christine does the education about what these are, to Mary's point, and how they're used and things like that. I will die on the sword of the narrative then, and sort of the consensus, and lead sounds like a very moralistic word. That's not what I mean, but like lead. But what I mean is, this is what we've done for 2 years. Is this listening?
I harken back to when we created our vision statement,
Right.
and we went sentence by sentence by sentence. I was careful,
Steeped in
and I have it pulled up.
Yes.
And this is where I think the challenge is with all
Yes.
of these boards and groups. It's in the spirit of collaboration and transparency, the Harwich growth policy is designed to ensure an open and inclusive decision-making process. That's what this getting together is all about, is to refine and make some decisions, or to set direction.
Yeah.
And I think we've done a great job with this
Yes,
vision statement,
yes.
and I think I'm not gonna stop you from sending all the documents
Yeah.
at once, but I would suggest in that meeting when we're together, we start with the vision.
Sure.
And say,
Great point.
where do you
Great point.
disagree?
Great
All
point.
right, now let's go to the next
I
one.
just want to be ready, and I want them, and I like. I think maybe that's why it was a little, because I mean, we've all been through this before, right? In our various professional tasks in life and leading, and even in your home, like you ask somebody, you delegate something, which we are delegated by the select board. You delegate something, and then they go do it, and well, why'd you do it that way?
Yeah.
Like, and that's like to reduce that, and then, well, you're gonna hear why we did it this way.
Okay.
Yeah,
just-
well, that, I like Brian's idea about starting with the vision
Sure,
statement.
sure.
I think it's also really important in opening, the discussion with them, to point out that the content of both the open space and recreation plan and the housing production plan are driven by state requirements.
Amen.
So that the outline of what's in them is that we have to fill in that whole set of
That has to be an
information.
epilogue.
It seems,
thought that was
it seems
implied.
like you
You
just
did
can't
say
say
it.
that enough.
You did
Right,
say it.
but
It just was not heard. You
It
said
just,
it very well.
exactly, it seems like you just can't say that enough to
Yes,
us.
Yes.
I mean, you did say it.
It, that needs to
That's on
keep
page
being
2.
And it
reminded
actually,
and reinforced
Yeah.
that we have a
The
construct we
template
have to
is
work
actually
within.
set by this.
the
yes.
template is set by the state. There's no requirement that you update those plans at the same time that you do a local comprehensive plan. We decided to do that
Right.
because we thought it would be,
Respectful of the.
well, it would be more efficient
Yes.
to
Yes.
get it all done. And since we needed a housing element and an open space element in the local comprehensive plan, what better way to do it than
Yep.
to get all of the plans up to date at the same time? May I ask Sharon a question?
Please, and then we're gonna move on.
Have you
Yes.
guys taken a stab at doing an executive summary yet?
Not yet.
You're
No.
not, you haven't, okay.
When is that in the timeline?
Well, it usually comes, before, when you're getting ready for town meeting, and you're starting, because, like, you need,
We're
it's
getting
like,
ready now.
sort of building that consensus,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean,
There's some behind the scenes, I mean, to be
it's-
we're very candid, like Tag and Bond, I mean, to keep the lights on has got, there's professional,
yeah, but it
that's
doesn't-
sorting itself
It
out.
doesn't mean that you can't do something in the interim, you know, and I do think like messaging is really key.
Yeah,
So, and if
yeah.
you don't get buy-in from the board on the housing plan, you're not gonna get buy-in on the LC, and the whole thing is gonna go.
Yeah, so
So,
this is
we don't
our,
want-
we're
none of
we're
us
on
want
it,
that.
we're our key opportunity, maybe we've gotten to, and I just to summarize then, because I wanna move on, because there's a lot, besides select board trauma, there's a lot else we're actually doing, so, date is pending, we will be there, it will be great. I think
No. Couple.
Christine's gonna remind them about what it's for. I will volunteer, I just need as much lead time as possible to like lead the human narrative charge. And I think they should have as much of it as possible.
Okay, couple,
So, yeah, are we at a place that we could, you know, provide them with drafts of each of the documents?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly can do that. I was gonna suggest too, just a very simple presentation, like or a not a flyer, but really a brief PowerPoint.
Like a PowerPoint, yes.
Yeah, just
Yes.
very, with all these things that you're saying, they're all really good points. Just to remind them again and you know, it's an opportunity to educate. So, you know, that's short of an executive summary, but,
That's exactly the
it's,
path.
you know, that's not heavy lifting to do, and I think you've been talking about a lot of the key points that should be.
Ed's gonna have
Yeah.
some comments on the politics, I can tell.
well,
appreciate it.
just a piece of it is last night I went to the select board meeting for the issue over at Brooks Academy building, but, and at the end of the meeting, the town administrator announced that he was going to be going, I think on Thursday, to the finance committee with a request for a reserve fund account transfer of $40,000 to augment the funds available for
That's helpful, but, I mean, that's, you know, I'm
Yeah.
not
Yeah,
trying to
no,
like
we,
say,
we,
oh,
no,
we,
but-
no,
but
we,
that's
this is
important.
professional services,
know,
we
But for the
appreciate it.
executive
yeah,
summary
yeah,
of the
just-
whole LCP, it usually comes, I mean, when you have the whole document
Yeah,
together and
yeah,
you
yeah,
know
yeah.
what all
Yeah.
the detail says, then
And
that's when you do
that
But that's-
actually, if it's not right, it's actually an opportunity to set up for them to pick it apart, right? You know, in the
Yeah.
sense of like including.
But I think it's
Yeah.
important that nobody objected to that, and which indicates that they
Great.
understand what an enormous
That's-
task
that's-
is. this
Good
is.
job, Ed.
So,
But I would recommend
you know.
presentation, you
So-
know, that could be delivered by
What
email.
you said is key, you don't ask open-ended questions. If,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
come in with,
Yeah,
okay, give us 3
this is our
suggestions.
job,
Or
this is what we've been doing.
point out, you know,
Yes, yes.
3 things
Yes.
that you feel we need to work on. And then if they're like, well, we don't know, because
Yeah, yeah, I mean, cause
yeah.
And then,
Well, Julie said that she really thought that there ought to be more in there about specific zoning changes that are needed.
yeah,
There, you know, we will have some of that in the LCP. It's not in the housing production plan per se, although there are some
There are
recommendations.
some.
There's
Yeah.
some recommendations, yeah.
And I did feel like the town of Harwich is actually further ahead, further ahead of a lot of communities, because they do allow, because mixed zoning, multifamily, two-family is allowed, ADUs are allowed by right before the state change. So I do think, you know, I've been impressed with Harwich's zoning. I do think that definitely there are things that need to be tweaked
yeah.
within the zoning, so
A lot of-
I think we can just add a few more items to it. She did mention inclusionary zoning as well as some other restrictions for affordable housing projects, so.
There's the, you know, those sort of large issues, like inclusionary zoning, but there are also some very small granular
Yeah.
changes that, having conversations with some of the folks in town that would like to add units along in, like the the commercial highway areas that they're running into some blocks on, which are just silly sort of definitional things
Yes.
that would
question for Christine, because one of the things that I find hard to digest in the document is the schedule of when things are going to happen over time, which is really based on a prioritization. So I'm looking at the recent LCP draft and implementation schedule, and I think we used to have a table, and there'll be something along the lines of saying which actions or which initiatives are going to happen.
Could we table this for just a second, or,
Well,
okay,
it's going to tie back.
okay, and then we'll keep churning through
Unless
the
I'm making
agenda.
more sense at
That's
all.
okay, that's all
But
right.
I think
Yeah, but you're allowed for a brief period of time. Go ahead.
we're all friends.
Yes, yes.
I think part of the confusion might be that we haven't really laid out a schedule of when things are gonna happen. And the question I have for Christine is, when you lay that out, it's based on a prioritization of, okay, which infrastructure, or which capital facility, or which, if we go back to our pillars of housing and environment, land use, I mean, that's the way I would read this document, set up these pillars. Is it the select board that then does that prioritization? We may lay out something which we think feels good to us, but we don't really have the ability to say which action should be before what other action. And maybe that's part of the confusion that the select board is getting caught up in. I don't, I'm not sure I agree with this or that. Yeah, so, I mean, to me, there's a process here. We're laying out things that fit underneath the vision, all comprehensive, but our ability to implement this has got to be constrained by funds available, or public, private, or, volunteers. So there's all sorts of ways to get from here to there. So we're caught in this middle of, these are all important to us. We might have a point of view on it, but somehow I think we have to impart, maybe there's a process by which that select board actually needs to come to a table to help prioritize. And that's the skin that we need from them on it, not necessarily to read it and vote it. I mean, voting on it's easy, put it on a shelf and then we'll forget about it for 10 years. But if you really want this thing to work,
I think that goes to what you were
Governance.
talking, the governance and the
yeah,
implementation.
there's a whole different way of thinking about this.
Okay.
Right, sorry if I did.
No, it's great, it's just we're like so nerdily into this, it's great. Stay in the
It's like,
agenda.
we want to welcome them in because they own a part of the process.
I think
They asked us to do this, so please come
so then
listen
you
to
gotta
us.
listen to it. So I think we have a little bit of a general plan. We generally have the sense of the timing, always complicated by the holidays. But because Sharon is here, I want to make sure we actually do some granular stuff too. So we banged out B and C. In the meantime, Barbara has done some lovely work with you did some really good, you can just summarize, you were with the Conservation
Oh, with
Commission, and the reason I wanted to make sure, I think you forwarded that to Sharon, but give us the summary, and anybody else who's done some actual feedback committee work.
Basically, Christine was there with me. Actually, Jeff was there in the audience that night also. So we just gave them an update of where we were, what we were looking at, and basically what the timeline was. I have to admit, I got the impression that most of them weren't tuned into what was going on with some of this, to be honest. I mean, that was my impression at least. But they really didn't have any pertinent questions, I don't think. Just
Amy had great, our conservation officer had amazing detailed feedback that you've gotten.
Right,
Which was
right.
really
She
good,
and John,
super smart stuff.
She and
yes.
John both did. They gave
Yeah,
great
really good
comments
stuff.
back
Really
on
good
that.
stuff. Some, language that was very key within their scope.
And they
so.
updated some things that we had in there, which I appreciated, the fact that, Pleasant Bay is
Yeah.
an addition, et cetera, et cetera. So, I just think it went fine. No heavy lifting or anything, so.
Exactly, I'm finding, I will be sharing the 3 plans with town department heads as well. I have given them periodic updates, following our website, but also, after all of our community engagement and survey information. So, I did go with Barbara. I think it's gonna be varied with committee members, so, but I do think town hall staff is probably a little bit more keyed into some
Absolutely.
of the issues that impact their departments directly, so, I know for the Open Space Committee, and the hazard mitigation, and, you know, for the housing, it's been, overall, it's been pretty positive. When you go to specific committees or specific,
It's a
town hall staff.
digestible thing you're able
It's
to
been
look at.
helpful, yeah. I will say that, planning board did endorse the housing production plan. Again, I do think there were some expectations, and so some information just needed to be clarified, and also, you know, to sort of explain how the housing production plan, which is guided by the state, or the template of it is, outlined by the state, and how it folds into the local comprehensive plan, and to make it more Harwich-proof, as you say. So, I think they recognized
Yeah.
that, and they did appreciate all of the work that the committee has been doing, so, you know, that was not lost on them either, so.
You know, Christine, you say that when we were at the planning board meeting the first time, when they, you know, they had a bunch of questions and stuff, I don't think it was clear to everybody on that committee that the housing production plan, we had to follow a template, we had to deal with certain things. I thought I could see the light bulb come on with some of the people
couple of
like,
members.
oh, right? And I got that impression watching the select board also, it's like, you know, there are certain things we had to follow, and I don't think it was very clear to everybody that to the audience that we're dealing with, is that this is being done in a format, we have to follow it because it's state regulations and state requirements, and they want certain things in the, you know, that we may think is ridiculous to have in there, but
Yeah.
we don't have any choice. But, so I guess my point is that whoever's here for the next round of this, because I don't think it's gonna be me, that we need to make sure that all of these folks are aware of that all of these plans are following guidelines, that we're just not making them up as we go along.
And it probably, on looking backwards, probably not the best idea to try and do all three of the updates at the same time.
Yes and no.
Well, no, but they all get,
You can blame me for that.
no. It's not your, it's the fact that we were behind on
Yeah, you
updating
know,
things,
this
so- and it just sort of seemed to make sense, but what happens is, they all become then considered part of this grand plan for the future, whereas, in my mind, the housing production plan and the open space and regulation plan are sort of the data platforms
Yeah.
which you create the grand plan off of, you know. You know, rather than, you know, they have some planning issues in it themselves, but,
Well, it's just
But if you look at the big
when you talk
picture,
about more
if
detail.
you don't have those two plans feeding into
Yeah, yeah.
to the
Yeah.
10-year plan, then what are you gonna do it 5 years later, and what's that gonna conflict with? And,
Yeah, right.
yeah.
so, I still think what we did was the right thing.
It's
But,
what we got. Acceptance
so-
is the answer to our problems. With that, is there any other, you know, granular feedback with our stakeholder areas that anybody has done? And just so we hear about it, so it goes into the record.
I
but-
brought it
Please,
to, I
thank you.
brought it to the Board of Library Trustees
Oh,
for
we
what it
love
was
the
worth, and I
librarians.
brought it to the Cultural Council. I didn't get a lot from
Yeah.
either of them.
Yeah.
I will nudge them all again and remind them. But it occurs to me, you know, I'll make an appointment, again, probably not until right after the first of the year with Kara. I see her all the time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, she's
I will
super
make a
busy,
formal
yes.
appointment, because she is a department of one and a half.
Yes.
To go over some of the overarching cultural things, because one of the things that did come back from a member of the Cultural Council was there was no mention, or they didn't see any mention of the junior theater in there or something. And I said, well, we can make sure of that, and, you know, as far as having these two cultural districts, there's places that fall outside of that, like the junior theater, but then there are also things called cultural partners, and that's what they are.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So it's sort of like It was right there in front of me, and I never even
Yeah, well,
thought
that's
to
the whole
just
point.
have a sit-down with
Yeah.
Kara
Yeah.
and do a formal little, thing with her about that part.
It's the whole point, because we keep grinding out, I've kind of nudged it in my mind that, like, we need to say more about the school, so
Yeah.
like,
Well, and and I look at it too, like, okay, we've given people the opportunity, we're doing our due diligence.
Yes,
We're really
yes,
trying to get
yes.
out there in so many ways and as far and wide as we can. And if people don't want to read the 120, at that point, it was only 120 pages. I gave them the excerpts too,
With that, please feel free to directly email Sharon, I always include myself and Christine too. We've started to give you, just throw all the list of all the visioning, which when you actually look at it is incredibly robust. We've been very busy over the last 2 years in some, so we're giving it all because that's, and it's all in the drive and stuff, but, just shoot Sharon a quick email about how you did that. Thank you for Mary and Barbara and stuff who did that, because in some, that creates a pretty impressive trail.
So there is, if I could ask that, so
Please.
in the Google Docs, there
Yes.
is like documentation of
Yes.
more than what was sent?
Yes.
Because we can, I can still access that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah, we're just trying to give you it all. Like,
I was
but
just
yes,
double-
yeah, it's all in the drive, but I asked
Okay.
everyone individually, because, yes, it is all in the
Yeah,
drive.
because I double-checked
Okay.
that today. That was like so long ago when I went out I went to the community center for that grassroots meeting.
Yes, yep,
Brian
and
and
it's
I,
in
and
there.
a few of us were there,
Yeah.
and all those notes I had taken were in there too.
Yep, we've not deleted anything yet, so.
Yeah, well, today I started going through some of the things, the open space and recreation, and there's a number of little edits that I think are important corrections.
Could we, maybe, can you give those offline to?
Sure, yeah.
What I wanted to
yeah.
do in our remaining hour was, because we're grateful, Sharon and Christine, what I thought we would delve into is, Sharon, thank you for getting the action and the goals and all that together. We could follow your lead of what is like critical from us next in that.
Well, I think we were still, we
So
still.
let's start there.
We were still looking at draft actions the last meeting.
So let's dig into draft actions.
Yeah, so that's where we left off. I think that's probably, and any updates, or if you meet with more committees or staff and get, comments, changes, please send those along. But I think we were still working on the actions and perhaps some of I think we had gotten through most of the goals and policies.
No, we had gotten through the goals and we were hammering out actions. Christine, are you good with that? Is that okay? Yeah, I just want to take advantage of Sharon as much as possible. I'm just opening it. It's cold in here.
What I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, it
We
is.
stayed
What I'm not positive of right at this moment is where we left off, because I moved everything.
Yep.
Everything looks like track changes, so,
Yep. Let me get it open. So I think in some where this is like, until further notice, this is do or die. We're like, which is okay, which is good.
Can't remember where we left off
actually, yeah,
either.
let me look at my notes, so bear with me here for a second, because from last meeting.
I said, I never know where to find stuff. Always getting lost. See, I know that,
No, I don't have it in my notes either.
We can.
So we can start wherever we
Yeah,
like.
let me just get it open.
I'm
We
pretty
can,
sure
we
we
can
went-
start
we
with
went-
potentially the most,
Natural resources.
maybe, yeah, or maybe the highest yield for updated. There has also been, there was also community feedback to me, that, and that actually should be probably part of our, whatever, drown this joint meeting with information. It's the survey data. A couple community members said, oh, that was on your website. I think it was on the website, and it disappeared. I didn't check it. We'd love to see that again. That was, it's a big transparency thing. And so that should actually probably be the fourth thing for that joint meeting. We should have that too. That PDF that has the survey data in it. Oh man, I just keep opening the open space recreation plan, which is not what I want. I want the LCP draft. There we go. All right, open. That's good. Okay. So, the big thing that we got to last time was that the action plan was they are going to sit right with the community goals, right? And doesn't look like maybe the table of contents reflects that. Maybe I just have the wrong draft. Hold on.
Community goals, policies, and actions.
Okay, it does then. So I have the wrong draft.
Well, the other, you know, if you wanted to,
No, I have it.
another alternative would be, I believe we were gonna discuss the open space and rec plan this evening too, but
I would focus on the big, not that we don't love open space and rec, but that's probably a little less controversial. Okay, now I have the whole thing open. Brian had really brought up the challenges of the implementation schedule. Thank you for that, for highlighting that. Let's dig into section 4 then. Section 4, community goals, policies, and actions.
What page are you on?
4.1?
4.1.
So this is broken up into,
Page 71.
Thank you.
these are broken up into a variety of sections, like land use and growth management, and it says actions.
And so those, or it's probably, I think, this is, we should probably emphasize this. This is best practice template, right? I'm stating the obvious, yeah, like, I can imagine, I don't like how this is laid, well, this is the template, right? I mean, this is the standard.
well, so actually.
I'm good with that, I'm just.
Just to talk about land use briefly, so at the last meeting, there was a fair amount of discussion around actions that are land use, growth management related, yet, you're right, that the template,
Ooh.
the template doesn't, really call for a land use like actions, which is very odd, because the whole plan is considered, like, it's all about land use, right? So the regional template doesn't really call for that, but I mean, it's perfectly fine to have, land use actions in there, or they're encompassed in some other actions, but that's just the way the template is laid out. But you have a land use section, so existing conditions, have a land use section talking about existing zoning, existing development patterns. There's no land use goal that's required. And
Should
there's
we have
no-
that there? So I think this is where it could
Could.
probably be the most effective in the
Yeah,
in the
you
next
know.
42 minutes.
Yeah.
So, because this is very digestible, and I think, if I were to guess, this is where people are gonna read, right? That's why we made this, like, let's put it all together. So the goals and actions. Let's dig in right with land use. And I see that you have natural resources, we have a goal. If you go down, you got other goals about, built systems, you got goals. Should we say a goal about land use?
Yes.
Well,
We
yeah.
need to be consistent.
We have to, I agree.
Really, it's really encompassed in the vision statement, so that's what,
I was
it's
just
a
gonna
bit of a
say, can we take
conundrum.
it from the vision
Let's-
statement?
Let's
Yeah.
repeat it then.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and And here in other sections, it has, you know, you have goals, and then you have policies, and then you have actions. And, you know, in the land use section, it just doesn't, I'm not sure exactly, are those goals, or those policies, or all
I
those
think
actions?
the play for consistence would be good.
Yeah, so this is it's a clunky Word document right now, so,
Yeah.
you wanted them to be put together,
Oh,
so
you
they're.
know,
Yeah.
it's all said with love. No
Yeah, I know.
criticism.
Really, again, no offense taken whatsoever.
Action related to a policy. I can see where there's several policies to a goal.
Right.
Should there be like a table, which is policy action, policy action?
So when it's formatted, and we can have like on a two-page spread, all of these things, you can have the goal, the overall goal for that
Yeah.
issue area, the policies, and the actions, and they'll all be
It makes it
kinda-
more readable. I'm just
Yes,
saying, if
right
my eyes
now,
are looking
it's
at
not gonna be-
policies.
It's not gonna look like that
No,
right now,
I
but
know,
it
I know
will
that.
eventually.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm making a suggestion that makes it more digestible.
So if we look at if we go back to the vision statement, so land use gross management actions, so, so, we have goal, we have policies. So I think if you go back to the vision statement, the goal is, we talk about this, Brian, you started to read about it. The goal is, someone could pull it out from the vision too if they want.
Again, can you say what page are you on?
Sure,
Page-
we're back to the vision statement, which is
Just
two.
page
two-
3.
Yeah, thank you. So the vision statement, so what pulls out of like a goal for me is, with a focus on, so that second sentence, with a focus on social diversity, strong community values, cultural identity, and recreation appeal that contribute to Harwich UK. Did we prioritize preserving the tranquility and outdoor appeal that defined, or that sentence? We could also go down into growth.
Well, maybe that's enough, that first sentence of the second paragraph.
Or under the growth policy, I mean, these are all apply. Harwich as a limited capacity to absorb additional population growth, to achieve our vision, the Harwich growth policy is to meet the needs of future generations for housing. That doesn't get quite as much the tree situation.
So, you're looking for land use policies,
We're looking,
We're looking for a goal.
a goal.
a goal, all
A
right.
goal.
Land use
A
goal.
goal
that
that's
sets
around land use that comes out of the vision statement. Because I think those are policies, and then we're gonna delve into the
Yeah.
actions,
Yeah.
but we're trying to get a
Cool.
goal.
Yeah.
A lot of the vision talks about sort of natural systems and resources, whereas the land, it's, the first section, first part of section 4 is land use / growth management actions. And then a lot of it, under that, talks about housing.
Well-
It's,
Well, I'm just going back to try and get a goal statement.
Yeah.
The last paragraph under growth policy, it's almost the last sentence. We aim to preserve the community's unique character, foster physical and environmental sustainability, create a vibrant, diverse, sustainable Harwich. Does that help? Well, that might not be exactly land use.
Usually, a land use policy, or, I mean, there could be multiple land use or goals, but usually it's what do you want to protect and where do you want to grow, you know?
Land, yeah, for that.
Yeah. So it's directing growth to designated growth centers with sufficient infrastructures to support it, and protecting sensitive natural resources and open space in other parts of town. I mean, it's sort of, it could be said a lot more
I know, we're trying to see if
articulately, but-
I think
but
we.
that's really what it is.
I think we
Yeah.
said it somewhere in here multiple ways.
We
and-
have. We've
Yeah,
s-
we're
we've
just
said it
trying.
over and
so,
over again.
so maybe pick what you'd like from that. Maybe, like, you know, I don't want to
Maybe
feel
just get Margot's phrases,
Yeah.
and then turn that into a.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Sharon can do that.
I know,
I know,
What
I know
Margot
the, I
just
know the
said.
drill on that one, but
Yeah.
it's also possible that these actions get encompassed in other issue areas. They were just put here as a placeholder because they were, you know, discussed
We
last
asked for it.
time, and it
Yeah.
was,
Okay.
I think there was sort of agreement that,
But I think
there needed to be a focus on, you know,
Margot's statement of the goal is very succinct
yeah,
Sure.
and clear.
yeah.
You know, it doesn't get
Did you
mushed
get her
all
what she
over.
said?
So I guess then the other discussion, because you know, should we all right, so if we all see what's in land use growth management action, just everyone take 30 seconds to read that. And then maybe we'll dig into natural systems and keep going through the others, and if we can get through the other 3 or 4 sections, 3 sections, natural systems, built systems, community systems, and bang out our actions, because that's where we need to give a little love. We'll, in our maybe last 20 minutes or something, we'll be able to get a sense of whether land use growth management needs to be its own section, or whether it could be folded in. Does that make sense?
There's Mary chiming in.
Yeah, go ahead, Mary.
One more. Just going to make that point because I went back to the table of contents, and it's such a flow, an easy flow. Section 3, it explains the larger bullet point is community assets, issues, and needs with subcategories of natural systems, built, and community systems. Then we go into Section 4 with the larger community goals, policy, and actions. And it should still maintain
Sure.
natural,
Sure,
built,
sure,
and
sure.
community, and take land use out
Sure, we may
separately,
have to,
because
we may have
that's
to,
the confusing point.
We have to stick these things somewhere, so just everyone, I need 30 seconds to read it.
Okay.
Management plan for DBC, because these are great actions, you know, but with our experts, we've revised CH2 zoning, integrate affordable housing, adopt a mixed-use bylaw, housing related, work with Harwich assessor to inventory of public available land that could be suitable for affordable housing. Seek CCC technical assisted land use master plans for developers.
And I think these are covered to some degree in other sections, for example, like, master plans for village centers, that could potentially go in community design. The reuse of existing
Okay.
development could also go in that section,
Okay.
so, I mean,
All right.
there are
right.
places where these could go.
These can get plugged in. Okay. With that, let's move on to maybe natural systems.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
Christine, on that revises CH2 zoning for multifamily development in East Harwich. When David brought up that multifamily last month, I mean, does that negate this, or is this what he was talking about? I don't
I think
remember.
this was part of what he was talking about in the
Yeah.
C2 area, because multifamily housing is not allowed in the C2 zoning.
Okay.
It's the,
And,
yeah, sorry.
so I would also comment on adopt mixed-use bylaw. The town has a mixed-use bylaw, so we may want to track mixed-use development
Ooh, that's great feedback. Yeah.
Support
instead.
and detract.
Okay, great. Natural systems, restore the quality and function of the regions. So, water resources. Yes. Policies. Would in policies, and this is based on something that, oh, okay, we have it. Good, we have evaluate and consider adoption of fertilizer management bylaw. Based on Amy's really smart feedback, she knew, there was some really good language in there. It was like landscaping methods, or, she knew the technique. So maybe Uh,
I incorporated all of her comments.
Awesome.
They're in here if it's
maybe,
not-
maybe it might
it's in a
be
different
evaluated, consider adoption of fertilizer management bylaw and or landscaping, or, I don't know if that's the right place for it. Maybe we don't have to be as specific as the fertilizer, or, well, it's fine, but,
Pretty sure it is covered.
Okay.
um,
because this is the
it
water
may-
stuff.
Yeah, it may just not be in this particular section.
Maybe it should be in
And what I
water,
tried
but-
to do is, I think the natural systems actions were all lumped together before, so I tried to break them out.
Got it.
Per
Got it.
issue area, so
Got it.
you'll see that a couple of issue areas don't yet have associated actions. You don't have to have
So
associated actions
here we
for all
need
of
to
these.
have actions for oceans. All right. Or is,
Let's
nothing,
keep them. Yes, good idea.
Okay,
stop pooping in it now. Sorry.
Oh, I don't-
So actions for oceans. So we see the policies. Shore, expand public access, improve coastal water quality, preserve, yes. Oh, there it is, restrict use of fertilizer and pesticides in wetland resource areas. So for the fertilizers, I mean, I'm fine with that, but in the ocean fertilizer and pesticides, do we more consider? Does that go in an action and evaluate and consider, or are we saying it as a policy we're restricting? I'm good with either, I just want, I can see somebody yelling about that.
Well, first off, it shouldn't just be under ocean resources.
Well, it's in water too, it's above in water too.
It's above and, oh,
It's
water.
it's repeating itself.
Oh, there it is,
Yeah.
okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I might offer that as, that's probably an action, and we should use the same language, evaluate and consider. Other, ocean resource actions. And we need wetland resource actions too. Yeah, and you've got it, I mean, we might be mixing our policies a little bit, so like in wetland, we've got more fertilizer. And it says consider bylaw amendments and restrict the use of fertilizer and pesticides in wetland buffer zones. That might be an action, right?
yeah, that actually might be more
Right.
appropriate in wetlands, not in oceans, so.
Right, well, there's wetlands and there's nitrogen in the oceans too, but like, you're repeating yourself, which I think is great, cause it's all related to water. But if we're gonna, for the continuity of reading, if it's we're putting it in water resources actions, then it should probably be in ocean actions and in wetland actions too. Margot, this is an area of expertise of yours, is,
I think I must be looking at a different version of this than you guys are, because I'm not following.
4950, how about the name of the document? Were we
It's
looking at
dated-
draft layout 12-1?
12-1.
No, I'm 1122, that's my
Sharon
problem.
and
She
Sent
emailed
this
it Sunday
in-
night, or
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
whatever
part
that
of the
is,
big
we're
Sunday.
Getting it
thread.
to you so late.
All right,
No, it's
I
fine.
thought.
Yeah, I have it
Oh,
back
wait a
in-
minute, here it is. No
Right.
wonder I'm,
And we're down around page 48.
this is worth
I don't
you
have the
pausing
pages
for, cause
on
it's
mine.
your expertise.
Slide it
lady.
on over.
all right, so I've been struggling to follow along here. because I was looking at something different.
Does anybody need some more chocolate?
It's gonna knock me over.
That kind of lady.
Joyce, I need one of those chocolates.
I know, we'll pass
definitely
you
do.
one.
I'm gonna throw a wrench in this, and I'm sorry if I do, but I'm struggling to understand the difference between a policy and an action when the narratives are all of the same rhythm, and they start with action verbs. So I'm struggling to understand the difference between the two.
I hear you.
I agree, Mary.
I was gonna kick that to our professionals.
Well, the suggestion is that the actions should be more specific. So you go from broad goals Oh, geez, thank you, I'm all
You need
set.
it too.
Policies that are, so policies, another way of saying them is objectives, so it's how you're going to achieve the goal.
Those were,
A little bit more refined, and then actions are specific steps or measures.
Can we change policies to objectives?
Sure.
Because when I see policies,
I've had
I don't understand how it relates to an actionable plan.
Yeah, I've had this come up in other towns too. It's really, it's a word choice, and totally, if the committee wants to change it to objectives,
Yep.
it's something that people understand.
Goals and objectives, I'm fine with that.
Okay,
Goals,
can
objectives,
make that
and
universal.
actions.
Yeah.
Sure. I am not gonna die over the word objectives versus policies. Yeah, no, it's great. Is that okay with you?
But I need
Christine?
candy now.
Well, I would make one other change, I'm gonna add to that.
Yeah.
Where I'm looking at the bottom of page 46 under water resources. If it's an objective, instead of continue to implement, which is probably more action, implement phase 3. The objective is to implement, you're trying to lift it up. Just, it's consistency of use of language.
Okay.
You're
sorry,
making
I'm
it
sorry.
broader.
Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
saying on the last bullet under water resources objectives now, it says continue to implement phase 3 of the town's CW.
Would that be an objective or is it an action?
That's an action written as continue. Implement, even though it's got an action, it's a higher,
I
it's a
understand.
higher level.
Why not just make it an action?
Yeah, you could do that too.
Margot, are there,
Isn't it an action?
because it kind of feels like to me that like some of the things that are objectives, now we're changing it from objectives, not policies, are actually more actions, that we could have fewer
Fewer objectives. yeah.
fewer objectives and more actions.
Yeah.
And I want, before we keep moving on to the other sections, because we've got to get to built systems and community systems. Margot, you're my water, well, YouTuber, bro. Any water things we're missing? Like, I think something we're really hitting, which, well, is really great, like in natural systems, I think this is gonna really resonate, I mean, who knows, but like, increased in action is increased regulatory requirements for new development to preserve or create meaningful percent of the site of native habitat, right on. And then you, do we have anything, another one, probably wildlife and plant habitat policies. Probably, we wanna put evaluate and consider, it's my tree stuff, tree warden position, or however you wanna put it, tree, evaluate and consider. I'm not saying we're endorsing it, but evaluate and consider,
Right.
tree, how do we say it?
Is it tree warden?
Tree warden or evaluate and consider.
Position.
Reinstating,
Reinstating, yeah.
reinstating the tree
Yeah,
warden
evaluate and
position.
consider reinstating
Statement of the
tree
tree
warden
warden position.
and clear cutting policies or something. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Yep.
And that should be under, wildlife and plant habitat actions.
So, okay.
And
So the town does not have a tree
Correct.
warden now?
Not currently, no. Well,
And
they
it's a
rolled
hot
it into the
topic right now.
DPW.
it does, but,
It's been rolled into the
Not-
DPW.
Unfilled, or?
well, it's not considered
priority.
satisfactory.
It's
the-
been
the
given
highway
over to the
director
Department
is
of Public
the
Works.
tree warden.
And it's not a separate appointed position right now.
For the areas that we're lacking actions in ocean and wetland, I would consider in the next draft that you move like some of the objectives into the actions. I think that will get us there. Okay, open space, which is right down below, Margot, for me, it's on page 52 onto 53
got
on my
it.
PDF.
Numbers
Open
on.
space, we have the open space, we have our policies, all very good.
Oh, shoot, man.
Oh, you have that, and you have that development tree protection and clearing bylaw. So again, I would move that out of a, objective, and I would move it into an action, you know, develop and consider, or evaluate and consider. bottom of page 52, under open space policies,
Okay.
you have develop a tree protection and/or clearing bylaw. I would say that's an action.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Before we
And-
moved on to built systems, everyone think about the earth for a minute.
and on that action, that there are, if you go through the zoning ordinance, sort of odd little references to maintaining consistent forest coverage in the open space,
Street canopy.
residential, yeah,
Ah.
development, that never seems to be
It's a tough
considered,
one,
yeah,
because
you
you
know.
talk with some professionals, they think if you regulate it, it's almost like you incentivize people to clear cut
Yeah.
and then come in for the permit. And that way there, you've got, the town doesn't have any leverage.
Well, there is a requirement that if somebody does that, the town can request a bond to be placed to do restoration if,
It's done all
yeah,
over all the time.
but
I
that's
was gonna say,
never
it's-
enforced.
How do you restore an acre lot of woods if you just clear cut it? I mean,
Yeah, there
Well-
wouldn't be enough of a bond to reforest that with mature trees.
Take about 20 years.
Yeah,
At
but, you
least.
know, there
yeah,
are,
that-
there
that's
are
the
these
joke
funny
about the
little
whole thing as far
references
as
that,
they're
restoration.
as far as
They'll
I've
give you the
watched,
money.
the little
Like fund
subdivisions
mitigation.
happen are never enforced and are not really given the prominence in where they appear that screams out, enforce me, enforce me, you know?
No, no, I agree with you.
So those
It's-
are,
it's-
those are sort of a lot of the granular changes
Yes.
that, you know,
I agree with you.
need to happen.
And I think in actions, it's really good, you know, clearing bylaw, tree protection, land clearing regulations. I think, it's almost like you're saying, we have the objective, we don't actually have the action.
Yeah,
So by
yeah.
maybe moving it into the action.
Yeah.
Shall we move on to built systems?
Built systems. Oh, there we are.
Right below, just following along. So again, this is where I struggle with. Revisit the Harwich design study for potential recommendations to improve the design, character, and form of development. How is that not an action?
Where's
There is an action for it, right. I would strike that second one because the action is down below. Review
Right,
Recommendations from the East Harwich Village Center.
right.
I would also add another action, which is back to the objectives. Develop design guidelines for new development or redevelopment that are reflective of village character. That's probably an action as well, to do one for each of those.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, there's no difference between the objective
Right.
of develop design guidelines for new development and redevelop that are reflective of village character and develop design guidelines
Right.
to define, those are the same thing.
But-
We're just repeating ourselves.
But you can make it different. You can make that action different by just starting off with define appropriate. Just scratch the first few words. And now there's a more definitive action in place.
I think what we're saying is the objectives are also actions.
Right, which is what I always struggled with, yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the objective is like, define development based on, you know, village character or
Yeah,
whatever.
there you go.
You
Take
know,
out the
and then
specific.
the format you're giving us, Sharon, is it's more general, and then you narrow down to, right.
Right, then you'd have one for the multiple villages and the second would be for East Harwich. I mean, I could see two of those to the one objective.
You know, and again, designate historic districts where appropriate to ensure that historic resources are protected. That's more an objective. That's more general.
I just can't help wondering, looking at the first one, where you're laying out Harwich, Port Harwich Center, East Harwich, West Harwich, and I'm thinking, right now, because of Pine Oaks, North Harwich, sleepy little rural North Harwich,
Oh, yeah.
has become a real focus, and it seems kind of strange to leave them
Let's-
out here. if
Let's
we're-
say we need all seven.
Sorry for
I
Pleasant
would
Lake
say
and
that-
South Harwich,
No,
because
let's
now
say,
I'm leaving the
let's- no,
last
I
two
think
villages
come
out,
one,
but,
come one, come all.
yeah.
There are higher priority ones.
Maybe just say it
but-
for each of the 7 villages.
And from a timeline, they don't all have to be done at once, right?
No,
So
of
they
course
structure
not,
it.
but I just know, to a little bit, we have to be like trying to, predict the future and see the future.
So a
and-
better way of saying that the objective is base guidelines for new development and redevelopment that are reflective of village,
Yeah.
base development guidelines on village character, and then you list all 7.
Yep.
And then the action is to develop the design guidelines.
Each one.
Right. Base development. Yes, Christine.
And it really probably should be all 7 villages.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because,
Nobody needs
because
to
now
be singled
Pleasant,
out. We love us
Pleasant
all.
Lake and South Harwich are, like, what are we?
We're all in this together.
thought this was going on in North Harwich 4 years
Go
ago.
Rough Riders.
If we had been planning
all
for
in this
it.
together.
Right.
Yes.
Thinking
No
about
situation.
traffic.
See, I guess the one problem I have with that is that North Harwich really isn't a village.
They
It-
are,
it's-
though.
It's a geographic
But isn't
part
it one of the
town.
7?
Yes.
Well,
It is, I mean,
Well,
I
you
mean,
know,
it's
it may not technically be, but
I
then,
think it's referred to as the 7, right, and that's their argument, that
but the
there's no
North,
village centers.
the North Harwich,
Well,
yeah,
that
but look at the whole town of
acknowledges
Brewster,
that.
it doesn't look like it
the
has a
North
center,
Harwich
it's all
Village
sprung out.
area is historically on
Yeah.
Depot Street
Yes.
between Great Western
Yes, and I was just gonna
and
say,
the highway.
and that's actually important,
You know.
in terms of, diversity in the history of Harwich. So
Yeah.
though it is not there now, I totally get your point, but,
Well, there's-
it is functionally a village.
You can drive through, and there are a couple
Yep.
of buildings that
Yep.
stand out. There's
Yep.
a building
Yep.
that
Yep.
used to be a garage.
Yep.
And there's a
Right.
couple of buildings that
Yes.
are very
Yes.
close to the
And
street
that's the oldest
that used to
cemetery in
be
town,
sort of a
too.
little
Yes,
thrifty.
yes.
Yeah,
Well,
And I think we're-
Yeah.
There's no, that's in Pleasant Lake, never mind.
yeah.
But, the argument of like why there isn't a there's historical roots to that for
Yeah.
why there is not a current commercial village there.
They've been
But I
lucky.
think
Yeah.
we still gotta acknowledge
Yeah.
that they're village. Okay,
Whatever it is, should be
More so you
purposeful.
don't need
yeah,
to.
yeah. Coastal resiliency is in built systems? Ooh, is that true?
It is.
Yeah.
Ooh, are we okay with that? I'm good with it. That's the template?
That's the,
Okay.
yes, that's the template, yes.
It's interesting, because back up in the other part, it talked about encouraging the marsh to grow back in to help protect us in case of storms.
This is all related
And I don't think they
now.
meant just the critters, they meant us too, you know?
It is, I find it odd myself, but that's the way it's,
It's great.
it's listed.
We'll have to keep, when we're pitching this, that like this is best practice template, in medicine, it's the same thing, like,
Well, that's
you
probably
write a
because a
note
lot
a
of it
certain
is
way, right, yeah.
Built.
It's been
Okay.
so built up,
Yeah,
right?
this
That's
is
why you put it in
couldn't
both
change
places.
No, but we don't need to like reinvent anything more than we are.
Listen, you can't read those.
Or now the AI just listens to me. And yes, there is a convention. Yes, it's true. All right. Actions. I think develop design, amazing action, develop design guidelines to provide review boards. And then the second to last one is Christine's really smart thing about the MVP summary. Okay,
MVP,
Christine can tell us what it is.
Well,
MVP.
Municipal vulnerability preparedness plans,
Okay.
but it's also part of the state's program
Yeah, okay.
to fund to fund and support the reinforcement or replacement of infrastructure along roadways, culverts,
Yeah.
and other town infrastructure that gets flooded constantly, that needs to be replaced or repaired.
Eventually, all of the towns that have an MVP summary findings, which Harwich is one of them, will need to update that summary based on this 2.0 framework, which is very, heavily focused on equity and social environmental justice, and, it's gonna be interesting to see how this all plays out. There's some certain number of communities that are being launched this year, so to continue to be eligible for that funding in the future, the towns are gonna be required to take part in that process, which is very different than the 1.0. So, yeah.
Are they gonna define environmental justice areas like they have for purposes of housing?
Yeah, I'm using it like in the way that I understand it right
Yeah.
now, but it's
Yeah.
the whole process is really focused on ensuring equity in the process rather than, and also in the implementation
Yeah.
of the plan itself. But it's just being rolled out like this year with certain communities, so it is going to be, if you want to continue to participate in that and get funding through that program, eventually, all the towns, will have to take part in it, so.
Okay.
The community facilities and service actions, amazing. I can really see you've incorporated a ton of our feedback, which is really great, you know. And to achieve greater housing in village centers, right on, man. Facility inventory, we're shouting out review utilization and current programming of the 204 Community Center, Brooks Free Library, and identify additional program needs and opportunities. I mean, these are such important cultural, you know, when I say cultural, community institutions. I think it's, prioritize middle school and elementary school improvements and invest in Monomoy Regional High School improvements. Yeah, I mean, yes, sure. Feasibility study for the pool, yeah, love that.
Oh, yeah.
They do the town meeting.
I mean, study it.
Did you endorse it?
No, I don't. I just, I'm an agnostic about the pool. I like the trees, but I'm agnostic about the pool. My only, again, feedback would be, the transfer station, like, is investigating expansion of recycling facilities at the transfer station to include composting and textiles. Is that an objective or is that an action?
Well, actually, they have a request in for this coming year for redoing the recycling area to increase its effectiveness.
Oh.
I think they're actions, that they're.
Yeah.
Their actions. I mean, you know, in one sense, like, we're putting all the good stuff out there, like, who's to be such a semantic grump about, like, whether it's an, but I mean, but since we're going through this whole exercise, right?
Well,
But I
this is
would
a good
shorten up on
opportunity
the
to
objectives.
change
Yeah,
them.
like, the objectives could be briefer
We
and,
have a ton of verb actions, which
Yeah.
are perfect as actions. I wouldn't
It's
take them
supposed to
out.
be
I
a
try to lift
plan.
up an objective.
Yeah,
and go,
I'm hearing the
Something.
suggestion to take another look at all of the objectives
Yes.
and maybe
They're-
streamline
Shrink 'em
them.
down.
they're not wrong, they just maybe
It's
are
just-
more of an action oriented, like, if we're
Yes.
following this
Yeah.
format.
Yeah, so
but you
next
don't wanna
time I
lose
can
any actions.
bring
No.
back, we'll do some more work
We
on,
love recycling.
on the objectives.
Can I ask a question on this tier 2 and tier 3 things? I mean, do any of them require that we have to put the bike lanes and widen all the roads that, like we fought on 124 years ago?
No, it's the town first develops the policy, so adopts a policy, so that that's something that the select board would adopt at, you know, so the policy should state what the town's desires are. It doesn't require, you know, and then the later funding and the later implementation is consistent with the policy. So the town has to first adopt a policy that it can get behind. It doesn't mean everything has to be widened, no. I know that was a controversy many years ago, I remember that, so.
Still is.
You're-
still is, yeah.
You're nailing it in the transportation section between objectives and actions, i.e.
Okay. So that's the
it-
style.
That's an objective, is design traffic improvement measures with sensitivity to seasonal variations in traffic patterns. For whatever reason, that conceptually reads in English as an objective. And then the action is, you know, participate in the traffic program, you know,
Yeah.
investigate costs. That's working.
Thank
like, that's really, those are your values, so to speak, in the policies, and then the actions are. All right, energy.
Traffic calming.
Mm.
That's a good one.
What's GHG?
A greenhouse gas?
Yeah, I mean, anything we can do to explain the acronyms.
And where's that down there?
That's under energy.
Spelled
Were
out
we
here.
gonna put in a list of acronyms,
Yeah,
with all
Mhm.
spelled out, so it
Yeah.
would be, people
it is.
could, if they're flipping through, because, I mean, if
Yeah,
you
yeah.
mention it way up in the text over
Yes,
here, and
yes,
then it
yes,
comes up
yes,
again over
yes.
here, you're not gonna remember.
Yeah, so you need a
Yeah,
key, is
yeah,
what you're
you
saying.
need a
Yeah,
key.
You need a
yes,
key.
yeah.
last page.
Yeah.
First page.
Huh? Well, no, you want it on the last page, so you can
Last
always
page.
flip to it.
Do we have an energy and
So
climate
it's the
action
right-hand
committee?
person.
Yes.
We'd like it on the front page.
We,
Christine says we do.
it's a climate and energy,
I think it's climate and climate,
Climate.
energy and climate in action. I think that's the name of
okay.
it. Yeah.
Cool.
Because it used to be,
I'll
That's what
double
it is
check
now,
on the
though.
name.
No, that's what
Was
it is
there-
now, yeah.
energy conservation,
No, it's
No,
the
I
Climate
forget-
and Action
I
Committee
forget
now.
what
I
committee.
think that
I'm
came
a-
from
Yep,
one of
Okay.
your group, so.
Yeah, cool.
town reports.
I love the mitigation plan. We're saying more about our trees, yes. You have a specific question, complete an update to the town's hazard mitigation plan to inform the town's risk and vulnerability. Christine, is our timing with that, or?
We're hoping to have that finalized by, let me see, to have a final draft in January or February.
Oh, so complete
To have it
an update would be timely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, there's still an opportunity if there are actions that are coming out, depending on the timing, to integrate that into this plan too. That's why there's some highlighted text here and there,
Mm.
that the text, for this, the LCP could be updated potentially, if it's ready, the HMP is ready in time. So that's something we're kind of anticipating, I know you're working on right now, so.
For the,
Once we, because we just did our survey, so once we've done any of the action items, absolutely, Sharon.
All right, great.
for waste management, I think, again, it's a great example of Brian's point. Objectives are very simple. Continue to support the town's treasure chest, expand food waste program to local restaurants, educate homeowners on the benefits of composting, and then maybe we need to be a little more specific about the action.
We already have the composting.
Yeah, see, the objectives are written as an action.
Yeah.
I try to synthesize it to one objective and then have these detailed actions.
Yeah,
I think it's easier to do that. And you get rid of the department, redundancy department.
Right. For the example of the first one, continue to support the town's treasure chest, how can we do that?
Right.
It's actionable steps of how we can support them.
Right, right.
Right, that's right.
Do you have suggestions on that?
That's always a good, that's a crowd pleaser, the treasure chest.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we could use some help on how it's supported.
Get your sticker and go every weekend.
Well, so, we could, I mean, I'm joking, because this is so small, but people really care about this stuff.
Yeah,
What are some of the ways to consider? I mean, there was morose level of controversy about not giving the volunteers their own free sticker, right? What was it, like $50
Yeah.
or
Right.
something for the whole thing?
yeah.
I thought it was like 12.
It was 10 at one point.
Well,
I mean, but it was
I
like,
think it's,
we
I
didn't
don't
give
know
them,
what,
but yeah, so what do you say, encourage and support volunteers, I don't know, what's the?
Yeah, I don't know.
This is such a silly issue, but.
Things where people donate,
So,
Yeah,
so
it's-
how it's worked, yeah, so people donate to keep it from being a free-for-all. you have to have a sticker, which means you have to live in Harwich, because it got very gnarly for a lot of
Well,
reasons. Yeah,
but the reason, though, you needed to live in Harwich and have a sticker
Yeah.
is because all of the other towns were closing theirs.
correct.
And so everybody was dumping this stuff in.
Okay.
Yes.
Of all the stuff that comes in, about a third of it's trash. And so the waste disposal
Right.
portion of it was
And
just
then there's
becoming
like, I mean, there were like
overwhelming.
fist fights, I mean, because there's like resellers, I mean,
Well-
whatever, it's the whole thing.
But
So, but
that's-
it's run by volunteers, and then the controversy was so you need to get a sticker, I think it's 10 or 12
Well, the
bucks.
controversy.
And then the
came-
volunteers didn't have their own, we didn't comp them their own stickers.
Well, that's part of it, but also the controversy is the volunteers who are there all the time, as good stuff come in, they get first dibs, right? And everybody
This is
feels, they
this
should
is
just
real
volunteer their
small
time
town
and watch that stuff just pass them by, there's no benefit to putting in.
Yeah, no. So that's what I
mean-
say, encourage and support community involvement in the treasure chest, that's probably how you say it.
And then there was little sort of high school lunchroom fights between the volunteers. And I
Encourage.
spent more time
I know.
mediating issues.
Encourage and support the town's treasure,
Keep it open,
the volunteers
because
that run the treasure
there were
chest or something like that.
several times.
It's actually a really important service.
It really is.
Tremendously, that's why we're
Yeah.
spending any time on
know.
it. Oh, it's huge. I mean, whole kids are like, all the sports gear that
I-
goes
I-
through there and all, it's incredibly
I was
important.
helping clean out a house that
Yes.
had, children's and babies' furniture and
Yes,
toys
yes,
and stuff,
yes.
and I get there on first thing in the morning, and there are 4 women there, and they're
They needed it,
they're
yeah,
they're from the Caribbean,
yeah.
and 2 of them are pregnant.
Yeah.
And it was like Santa Claus
Yeah.
just dumped on their house.
It's
They were just
incredibly,
thrilled.
that's so like encourage and support. We're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
being
Okay.
more weird than we are baseline
Yeah.
in talking about this. This is something that makes a small town
Yeah.
very,
It was
very vital.
fabulous.
It's green,
Can-
it's all this stuff. Yes, Mary, so encourage and
I'm
support
sorry.
the town's
I always
treasure
have to
chest
throw my
volunteers.
voice in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can, 2 examples, just based on what I'm listening to, can we define the services or the skills needed by the volunteer
Yeah.
community for the treasure chest? And further, is to assist them in developing a system for receipt and vetting or whatever,
There you
but
go.
assist them in providing that type of
there's some
service,
possible actions.
process.
It's great actions, Mary. Love it. Love it, love it, love it.
Yeah.
All right, and then you got some other actions because it's 6:51. We got to get through community systems. Community systems, and we're going to have to double back and I think probably make the executive decision that land use growth management is going to get integrated into this stuff.
And we'll do that next time too. So I'll take
Okay.
all those, whatever policies or actions and move them into
Yep.
policies or actions in these other sections.
Amazing.
And so they'll be
Yeah.
incorporated there. I think
Perfect.
that's
So
a
we've
good-
made that executive
good
decision.
decision,
I
yeah.
love it. This is important stuff. Cultural heritage. So one of the things, cultural heritage policies support additional programming. Why don't we say at community, I wonder if we need to be as specific at the 204 in the community
Yeah,
center?
because the library also has.
Yes,
a
I was gonna say the
program
library,
and-
so in the
South
cultural
Harwich Meeting
heritage
House.
policies or objectives,
Yep.
let's not
Well-
call out we can call them out in the actions, but let's not call out
Yeah.
the 204 in community center.
No.
Let's say, because people
facilities
will
throughout
feel
town.
Town
left out.
facilities, yeah.
Town
Facilities throughout town.
organizations, because
Yeah.
that everyone can get
Yeah.
on that bus.
I'm sorry, which was it, town facilities or organizations?
Town organizations, I would say, right?
Well,
Facilities.
I
Yeah,
would say-
And
you were
organ-
talking about specific buildings where it happens, and I'm thinking like the library also is a place with
Meeting house.
program, South Harwich Meeting House, which isn't a municipal, but is, a partner, so.
But,
Could you say both?
well, you can say, support additional programming at, public and private
Venues.
cultural arts facilities.
Venues.
Cultural facilities
Just
in the
say
town.
Venues.
Yeah.
Venues.
So, you
Yeah.
know,
Say venues. That way we're staying,
that includes
Nice
the
and
private
big.
libraries, it would
Yes.
include the theater,
All right, Eugene,
know,
there.
the art galleries, whatever.
And then it makes sense that an action is support additional programming at the 204 Harwich Community Center. Do you want to add the library there?
The library through the Friends has done, well, yeah, you might as
Sure,
well, I mean,
put
because
the
I think those
library.
are the three
Private
main ones in
libraries, yeah,
town,
just mentioned, yeah.
where, you know,
Where are we putting that?
That's an action.
The
So it
action,
says
support
support
additional
additional
museum.
programming at the 204 in the
Oh,
community
yeah.
center.
Yeah,
So we should probably say,
Brooks.
it's been on the ropes for a while, but Barbara just reminded me,
Museum.
the historical museum
yeah, so
too.
it should say support additional program at the 204, Harwich Community Center, Brooks Free Library, Brooks Museum.
Yep.
I'm
Um,
sorry, it's Brooks Museum?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep staring at it there.
so,
I know it's right.
Yeah.
one of the edits is in several points where they talk about Harwich Center, and they talk, and they reference the architectural importance of it, and they talk about the church and the library and town hall, and none of them mention Brooks Academy. And then they go on to talk about the architectural heritage of Harwich Center being the Greek Revival architecture. None of the three buildings they mention are Greek Revival. The one that is,
Brooks
is
Academy
Brooks
is, yeah.
Okay.
So
Sounds like we should.
that's a note that
we
I'll
should add that in.
recommend.
Brooks Academy should be a,
Yeah. I'm not gonna knock the town hall, but, I think it was a bank.
It was a
It was a
bank.
bank.
I don't
It
think
was.
it says.
That's why Bank Street is Bank Street,
Right,
because it
right.
ended at the
Right,
bank.
right there.
Right.
It was two
Yeah.
banks, actually.
And it was actually started by one of the Brookses.
Oh, of
Right.
course. Okay.
And the library was originally,
Right.
Cultural
Time
heritage action, I wonder, I love that we continue thoughtful investment in services that support our young residents, yay. And we've got our elderly and disabled friends in there, yes. Could we, say, I wonder, cultural heritage policies, we should probably say something in here, continue to recognize, the unique contribution of the Cape Verdean population to the history of Harwich.
Mm-hmm.
That should be in, cultural heritage objectives.
Is there anything to say about zoning with preserving cultural, historical heritage? Like the development that's taking place in the church in West Harwich? I don't know if it's a zoning rule or not, but something
I
that
think it
helps.
kind of says here,
encourage.
develop, design, and
Design
guidelines that
Yeah.
protect and preserves forms, layout, scale, massing, and key character defining features of historic resources.
Does that apply zone? Okay.
Well, it's not really, design guidelines aren't really zoning. Like in the historic district, the Historic Commission has extensive
I just might
control over building design.
reacting to what I heard
Never
of
really
the
figured
select
out how
board,
to
to say,
incorporate-
are
how
there
to put it.
specific
Yeah.
zoning, or zoning needs to be
Yeah,
lifted up?
Yeah.
Is that one area to emphasize? That's all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, yes, it
But
can
then,
be.
that probably doesn't hurt to mention.
So, I'm sorry, can you, direct me on, was there more detail on the zoning side of this, or
I
at this
thought it
time?
was missing, but should
Yeah.
we use the word zoning in here? Consider,
I think for some of the height restrictions, that would be zoning, but for the design guidelines, I agree with Ed. They're more subjective, and they may,
yeah.
I think the Historic Commission would have, more ability to evaluate the architectural, design
Yeah.
of the building than, say, the planning board, has the ability to do that.
I don't have an answer, I just
There
suggested.
are different, yeah, I mean, there are different, like Christine was saying, there are design guidelines, and then there are sort of more form-based regulations that can be adopted.
Yeah.
So it's really a scale.
So, but even though, I just, where we have thoughts that are specific, it's nice to include them, and it might be work with the historical commission to come up with design guidelines that might make it easier for somebody to do development work in a historical building, rather than, to your point earlier,
Well, they have
things
to.
are gonna
That-
happen
that's
to us
what
unless
those-
we
Yeah.
That's
say
what the
what we want
historical
them to do.
commission functions to do.
Can I say,
Yeah.
I am so into the fact that the goals, the objectives, and the actions
Yeah.
are really good.
It's really starting
It's
to.
like really good.
I'm really.
Is that helpful?
It
that-
really is. I know you
know, the
are at a
stage.
professional level, you know, but for us laypersons who, it's like really good.
Yeah.
No, I'm
It-
glad
it-
that it's helpful to kind of see it
Profoundly,
together.
profoundly, and I think that's why we're picking up some of the redundancy
Mhm.
between the differences between
Good.
objectives and actions.
And then the cultural heritage actions, the third, fourth one
What?
is the only one that really refers to sort
We
of
got you back.
pre-settlement human activity, i.e.
I made fun of this, and
Yeah.
you guys all
No, no.
pointed out.
Well, it's
Like we're
interesting.
just disrupting pots everywhere or something.
In the open
I run
space
out
and
of-
recreation plan, there's a point where
No, she's-
it refers to,
She's really
since 1620, Indian, Native Americans, and it's sort of like, wait a minute, Native Americans were here,
Of course, no, and I
year one,
stand corrected on
the
my
year
ignorance. That's why I'm
2000
making fun of.
BC,
That's
you
why I'm
know.
making fun of myself about
You know,
it. Yeah, no, you're right.
and
You're right.
that needs to be,
Correct.
something needs to be done.
I hope you made
That
a
will-
note of that.
I
in
did.
your-
Joyce,
Yeah.
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
May I just quickly, in the last 15 seconds, I just have a couple word suggestion
We got to
changes.
get through the last few, but yes, go ahead. And then we've
Right,
got two
right.
more sections to bank
The
through.
second bullet
Yeah.
that says pursue traffic calming.
Yep.
I would prefer under an action that it would say enact, meaning you're gonna do it. And then the last one, the support additional programming, that should be an objective. And then the develop a land clearing, I'd like the word adopt. I think it is more actionable as opposed to just something we'll administratively put on the books.
One of the things you might not have heard, Mary, is we broadened the support additional programming to include like the
Okay.
cultural institutions, and then we're making it action by actually naming the cultural institutions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. So we got to get through economy and housing. So economy, I think these are kind of great actions. I thought it was cool, and this is like based on our feedback. Like we're doing things here. The industrial land zoning we talked about, the Cape Cod Commission stuff.
And the first housing action of pursue zoning, to Mary's comment, should that be an act?
Yeah. So this is
Yeah.
this is why we come full circle. This is why my grumpy grump about why these have to be looked at together is, and why it makes sense that the objectives are, because this, I feel like this section is actually going to be an area that we really dig into, is the goals, the housing policies, and the actions. Like this will be, if the wave of the select board could, if the winds keep blowing that direction, this is something like we can really dig in with them to see the housing production plan, see this with that, right?
I definitely just adopt map zoning.
I mean, this is where a lot of discussion is going to be. I don't have a ton to add. Karen's feedback was, isn't this, and again, this could maybe be for discussion, isn't this what the housing advocate is supposed to do? There still needs to be a better defined various local housing entity roles. So could we put that as an action? Actually, better define, take Karen's feedback and say better define various housing, agencies' roles? That could be an action.
Yeah. Yeah, because they fight amongst themselves sometimes.
We're on the economy?
We blew through economy and we're
Okay.
on housing.
Okay.
And what I was saying was that I think
Yeah,
this,
that's
if the
defining
winds
craft.
keep blowing the way they're gonna blow,
Yeah,
that this will be a big point of
yeah.
discussion.
Just a comment on,
It's
on the economy. The fifth policy in economy is the same as the second action in economy.
Because we're putting them together, we see this now.
Yeah. Literally the same wording.
Yes, Christine.
Yes,
We also have-
I saw that too.
Yeah, okay.
We also have, under economy and actions, just, we have developed a mixed-use bylaw. I do think maybe, to Sharon's point, include form-based, zoning codes might be another, option to include.
And there are a number of state programs and like downtown districts and those sorts of things that can be investigated to support, to provide support for commercial areas.
Yes,
you
yeah.
know.
Christine, could you say again where that mixed, where I just saw it myself, but I'm trying to
So
make
under,
notes here and I'm,
economy and
it's under economy?
actions at the
Okay.
end.
Thanks.
It says seek technical assistance from Cape Cod Commission and Commonwealth to develop best practices for commercial and mixed-use village centers.
Yes.
So I think including maybe form-based, zoning codes might be better.
Yes.
Great.
Yes,
And
great.
then, we're out of time, but I think we threw everything at the wall in the housing actions here, and this will be a really good point of discussion if that's where it keeps blowing. Like, one thing I would potentially point out is, to provide funding to the Harwich Affordable Housing Trust to hire a housing coordinator. Well, okay, maybe that's like open for debate, as opposed to like, could the Board of Selectmen better define that? Please.
We have a affordable housing advocate who,
Yes.
I think the job description is similar to some of the
Oh,
responsibilities.
amazing. So we don't say hire, we just say better define.
And clarify. the
Better
roles.
define local housing responsibilities, monitor subsidized, you know what I'm saying? We don't need an actual person to do it, we just need to better define. Okay. Amazing.
Is that a full-time position?
Yes.
It is.
What,
It's a full-time position.
Brianna?
Who's the person in it?
Brianna
Brianna
Collins.
Nickerson, nope, she popped.
Okay. With that, we've accomplished a lot. Go team. Our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, December 7th, and I have it all marked out for the calendars. I have to send you an
Tuesday
email.
the-
It's the first Tuesday of the month until we get to
January.
January.
January
Excuse me, what did I
7th.
say?
Yeah, I have that.
Sorry. January 7th. It's the first Tuesday of the month, all the way between now and game day of May. We all heard there may be something before then. I had offered in the dates, we may be superseded, maybe our super session with the planning board and select board is on the 7th, but, yeah, we'll see.
One
Please.
point, in my notes from last time, we were talking about the timing for the warrant for town meeting, and it said in my notes it's January 15th.
So we need to come up with a placeholder,
Well,
Yeah, yeah,
warrant article.
Yeah.
I think that's,
yes.
is that something you can help us with, Christine?
Sure, I
Yeah.
did,
I know nothing about it.
the town administrator is aware of that and placing, to your point, to have a placeholder for that, so
Yeah.
yes.
well,
I will follow up regarding that as
Okay.
well.
it can be very,
Very
Yeah.
simple.
It can be very, very
Yeah, we're
similar,
holding a
so-
spot. And to be fair, for those of us that are living and dying by the calendar, the first, if it goes by our town, charter, right? The first night of town meeting will be May 5th, first Monday in May,
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
Met Gala.
yeah.
The first
Yeah.
Monday in May. And, when do you hear about, like, where we would be? Are we gonna be first night, second night?
I have no idea at this
What would be the smart money? You have no idea.
Well, you can never
So don't
predict
want-
that.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean,
It-
if they put it far down on
Yeah,
the
we'll be
agenda,
second.
you can.
Guaranteed second night.
Yeah, it'll be the second night, but
Okay.
sometimes town meeting can get stalled out,
Okay.
Yeah.
and you think you're gonna
Really-
come up,
Really stupid.
always on the stupidest, most trivial things, yeah.
Okay.
But let's see. The article,
Cinco de Mayo. Bring your margarita with you.
forget,
Okay.
I forget the article, the placeholder article needs to be in, I believe it's the 7th of February.
Okay.
It's either the 7th or the 14th.
Cinco
Either the first or the second Friday,
Okay.
February.
With that,
Are you comfortable now, with these changes that we talked about, just sending this document out as it is, or you were looking for?
I've come full circle on this. I think when I see it, it looks better. I mean, you're gonna make these changes, so maybe we don't have to like send it tomorrow, like they can make those
Yeah.
changes. I would like to look at it one more time.
I would like to see a little epilogue in the very beginning, which has got Christine's comments, that this is a template, this is what it's used for. So we have to remind people at the very
Yeah, we're
beginning.
gonna lead from the front on this. I think I've sorted you all, this is why we meet, this helped us all sort it out a little bit. Yeah, I think with these next round of,
And if it would be helpful, I mean, we don't have those introductory sections prepared yet, but if we start to put some meat on the bones of that,
Yeah, where would you put that?
well, that's in the very introduction to the plan, so the very first.
For the vision?
Yes.
well, and that should be
Well,
pretty
if
cut, that should
That's the order you
be,
want it in, yeah, but, yeah.
I mean, for example, Cape Cod Commission involvement, that's pretty cut and paste for you, right? I mean,
Yeah, that's not a lot, but
I,
it's really
like
like,
the
why do a
planning
plan?
process is, you could include that. I mean, those two things, and then if you could make,
And then the outreach, so.
yes,
we can
if you could make
build that.
these changes, this was like high yield feedback tonight, I will,
What is still missing is the capital infrastructure facilities plan, but, and that, we'll still have to work on that, but this part is, you need to get this part of it done, and then can work on the capital.
we have HPP, the open space, we're gonna, that's,
Yeah, there's a lot on your plate
I
right
know,
now.
that's important, but
Understood.
we're doing it, and we,
Yeah.
next pending weather event is when we're all gonna meet.
Christine, who's following up with the select board or
I'm
making
gonna follow up with
decision
Connie
as far as
She's on
getting
it.
together?
into a joint meeting,
It's great.
get
Okay.
possible dates,
It's great.
Thank you.
hopefully by the end of this week. but we'll see.
With that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Oh, we all have to, we have
Yeah.
to roll call.
Roll call.
Brian is in favor of adjourn.
Says Margot.
Says that.
Joyce?
Bernadette, aye.
Barbara Nick, aye.
Forgot your name.
Thanks, guys. All right.
Mary?